Tonight, the Nigerian military impounds and destroys another barge loaded with over 600 barrels of crude oil from illegal bunkering. The military operation was launched after receiving a tip-off from a security service provider. World Bank country representative Shubham Chaudhary explains why the body is granting $800 million loan to Nigeria, says it will aid petroleum subsidy removal. 125 Nigerian students airlifted from conflict-ridden Sudan arrived in Nnamdi International Airport in Abuja to recount their experiences. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky makes historic visits to Rome, meets with the Pope and the political class.
On business news tonight, World Bank asks Nigeria and other energy-rich countries in Africa to adopt asset diversification in oil and gas operations for economic transformation.
And on sports news, Southampton's 11-year stay in the Premier League ends in tame fashion as the Saints' relegation was confirmed with a defeat at home by Fulham. We begin tonight with a developing story just in. The Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Al-Kalibaba, has ordered the immediate arrest of Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assault of a police officer in uniform. A statement by the Force Public Relations Officer Muyiwa Adejobi says the IGP directed the Commissioner of Police, Lagos State Command, to effect the arrest of Mr. Kuti. The IGP has equally ordered speedy and full investigation into the remote and immediate cause or causes of the assault and prosecution of the suspect accordingly. According to Mr. Kalibaba, the acts of disdain for symbols of authority will not be tolerated, and offenders of such crimes will be surely brought to book. Meanwhile, in a story he created over 2 hours ago at about 7:16 p.m. on his official Instagram page, Seun Kuti wrote that an attempt was made on his life and that of his family, to which he claims he has proof. According to him, he has agreed not to press charges as an apology had been tendered to him. However, he did not state if he was referring to the police officer with whom he had an altercation. And now to the fight against illegal oil bunkering. The Nigerian Army, in collaboration with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, that's NNPC, have again impounded and destroyed another barge said to be carrying stolen crude oil in the Warri area of Delta State. Security consultants to the NNPC and military officers acting on a tip-off intercepted the barge, which contained over 600 barrels of stolen crude, and arrested 6 persons who have been handed over to security operatives. Our correspondent, Delia Moyeni, reports.
In continuation of its onslaught against crude oil theft, security consultants of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, and officers of the Nigerian Army have caught up with another syndicate, neck deep in the trade. A jetty where the stolen crude is stored after it's brought in from the creeks is the first port of call, and we were briefed on the sting operation by the security consultants.
2.5 weeks ago, we received intelligence that this yard, which is called Maui Services Limited, was being used as a depot for the transfer of illegal products. But what we had to do was to plant surveillance in the area until a barge came in. But it did about 2 trips. It was on the 3rd trip we didn't think that there was going to be that much sewage in this place for a truck to be coming in and going out, and we had to apprehend the truck. So upon getting the truck and inspecting it, we discovered it was carrying crude oil.
The next port of call is the site for the destruction of the barge, and it's a 30-minute ride from Warri town in Delta State into the creeks. Arriving at the site, 4 of the 6 suspects arrested deny any involvement.
The company that hired us, they are licensed.
You saw the license and you confirmed it?
I don't saw it because it's not on my capacity to look at that license. I'm just a...
So who did it on behalf of your company? Who looked at it?
I believe my management do that.
Now, this barge was loaded with 600 barrels of crude oil. It's yet to be known who the real players are, but arrested on this particular barge were 6 people by security agencies. Now, this barge is in the process of being destroyed. However, some have raised the question of the effects on that on the environment.
Like it or not, it's literally between the devil and the sea. Where do you evacuate the oil to? Number one, can't keep it in my house, can't keep it in yours. You know, if we incinerate it, it's much better because it goes into the atmosphere. Not that it is the best, but first it serves as a lesson that this is not the best business to go, because you are seeing it that this is how you're going to end up if you continue with it. So the most important thing is the lesson. You know, that's why if you go to places like Port Harcourt now, even this region, you find different type of fish coming in now, because people are beginning to reduce the rate at which they do this. Port Harcourt atmosphere is literally very, very clean now if you look at it compared to those days where it had black soot.
To avoid the situation that occurred the last time the exercise happened, where one of the people who lit the fire was almost killed by the explosion, we watched the exercise from a distance. Dili Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
To the power sector now. The federal government is confident that the 700-megawatt Zungeru hydroelectric power project will be operational soon. The Minister of Power, Mr. Abubakar Aliyu, gave the assurance during an inspection of the project in Niger State. He explains that the project has now been completed and the transmission company of Nigeria, TCN, is ready to accept power transmitted from a power generating plant.
The Minister of Power, Mr. Abubakar Aliyu, in the company of members of the Senate Committee on Power and Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State, are inspecting the Zungeru hydroelectric power project as part of efforts to deliver improved electricity supply in the country.
We are here on a fact-finding visit for them to come and see what we have been telling them. If you may cast your mind back to last week, we had a Senate Committee public hearing where I told them that this work has been completed, and I invited them to come and see. As you can see, we have gone around, we have gone to the crest of the dam, the dam is completed, the powerhouse is completed, we have come to the powerhouse, they have seen the turbines, all the 4 units, which we have already tested on the grid, and they are waiting for launching them finally to the grid.
The Zungeru Power Dam has a height of 95 meters and is located on River Kaduna. It's the first dam to be constructed using roller-compacted concrete technology. Most components have been completed, including the switchyard and the substations, to the delight of the State Governor and the Senate Committee on Power.
If you look at the size of this project, it's not a small project. And it provides for great opportunities, even for the communities around. Their kids, their family, the community will benefit from training and work, job opportunities, and what have you.
We're thinking that at some point government was going to be shortchanged. And so the minister was invited to appear before the Power Committee, and he gave details of what we've seen here today. So it is for us to go back to the Senate and report to them that we've seen we're satisfied and the concessioning should go on unhindered so that Nigerians can get the benefit of the money that has been expended here.
The 700 megawatts project is expected to be commissioned before May 29, 2023, as the government hopes to create more jobs through the project.
And it's home at last for another batch of 125 Nigerians who arrived the nation's capital today after weeks of harrowing experiences in Sudan. Well, they landed at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport at about 12:49 p.m. on board the Taco B737-300 aircraft from Port Sudan. The latest arrival brings the total number of Nigerian evacuees from Sudan to 2,371. Upon arrival, the returnees were profiled by immigration officials alongside their colleagues from other agencies.
Let's keep going this way. One after the other, they arrived their fatherland after weeks of war in Sudan. The returnees, who are mostly students, are received by officials of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons, who briefed them on measures taken by the government to alleviate their suffering.
As I speak to you, no one woman is left in Sudan because we made them a priority at the onset of this evacuation to bring home women and children. So those who are left are men, mostly students that we hope will be returning in no distant time to the country. Decision on when to close this evacuation is a factor of higher authority, which I cannot determine here. But when we give our report, that will determine who is left and how do we get them back.
They then go through immigration processes at the airport and some refreshments. This latest arrival brings the total of evacuees so far to 2,371. Government officials give updates on the evacuation and plans to assist them survive their ordeal.
We are able to reach a wider, more numbers, so for now, those that are worried basically are, placement of schools, and we are interfacing with the Ministry of Education. That is a part of the reintegration committee, and all they do is to make sure they see their certificates, see if they can validate, if they can transfer credits to, universities, and how to generally deal with placement.
The returnees then speak of their plans in the days ahead.
It's a bit sad, but at the same time we're hopeful, and I believe everything happens for a reason, and everything is going to turn out fine. I really do not know yet. For the next couple of days, I just want to settle down and just refresh before I start thinking of anything else.
As a student living in the hostel, we are hearing the sound of the gun, the bombard inside the or outside the hostel, near to the hostel. Is very bad experience to us.
Just before they depart the premises of the arrival hall, they are handed over some goodie bags and the cash gift of 100,000 naira.
And now to road safety. The Federal Road Safety Corps has dissociated itself from what it calls a baseless and unfounded opinion published in some news platforms, not Channels Television, linking the body to seeking the introduction of Sharia law to complement existing extant regulations on enforcement of traffic rules and prosecution of offenders. The Corps Marshal, Dauda Ali Biu, has taken steps to sanction the source of the story and has recalled with immediate effect the officer involved to the national headquarters, Abuja. The Federal Road Safety Corps is, according to him, a government agency with statutory responsibilities for road safety administration in Nigeria and is sensitive to the country's multi-religious as well as heterogeneous ethnic composition. The FRSC clearly notes that the Corps is neither religious nor sectional organization, but a federal government agency established by law. And in part two, after the break, 8 states subscribed for access to a $500 million World Bank loan facilitated and secured by the federal government for livestock development. Plus, the World Bank country representative Shubham Chaudhry explains why the body is granting an $800 million loan to Nigeria to aid subsidy removal. Well, that's in a moment. Just stay with us. Hey, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television. A reminder of our main stories. Nigerian military impounds and burns another barge loaded with over 600 barrels of crude oil from illegal bunkering. And they see yet another batch of Nigerians returning from war-torn Sudan after weeks of harrowing experience. Again, the Nigerian military impounds and burns another barge loaded with over 600 barrels of crude oil from illegal bunkering. And World Bank country representative explains why the body is granting $800 million loan to Nigeria, says it will aid petroleum subsidy removal. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky makes historic visit to Rome, meet with Pope Francis and the political class. Now to a local conflict that has left death and destruction in its trail. Well, again, efforts are on to resolve the lingering communal clashes between Atiap, Hausa and Fulani tribes in Zangun Kataf local government area of Kaduna State. At this time, leaders of the three warring communities have resolved to sheath their swords and settle their differences. The communities met with Governor Nasir El-Rufai and heads of security agencies at the Government House, where a Peace and Reconciliation Committee was set up with representatives of the communities.
For decades, issues of land disputes between Atiap natives, Hausas and Fulanis in Zangun Kataf local government area of Kaduna State have resulted in the lingering communal clashes between the groups, leading to fatal situations from both ends. Hundreds of lives and property have been lost in the over 2 decades of serious conflict. With few days to the end of his tenure, the Kaduna State Governor, Nasir El-Rufai, is meeting with the representatives of the Atiap, Hausa and Fulani communities with a view to finding a lasting solution to the lingering communal clashes in southern Kaduna. The meeting, which has heads of security agencies, observers from some international organizations who have been working on the peace-building effort, is part of the last push by the El-Rufai-led administration in Kaduna State to resolve the intractable crisis rocking various communities in the southern part of the state.
For a crisis that has been lingering, we have tried to find a solution for it. I understand that the crisis is above 30 years. So if we can resolve this problem, I think this is the beginning of good things to happen in southern Kaduna.
A committee has been set up with a mandate of 1 week within which to submit a report and resolve the issue of farmlands and the issue of the grazing area. And I want to believe that the committee will do a long thing that will be able to help the community in resolving this crisis.
Among the issues discussed during the meeting is the need for all parties to lay down their arms and return to the negotiating table, a suggestion that is welcomed by all leaders.
Everybody is tired. Everybody needs peace. We are tired of burying our loved ones. We have to go and sit down, bring the difference. What is the difference? All of us were indigenous of southern Kaduna. How can we continue killing ourselves like animals?
In terms of conflict, one party would have to let go, and then you can't have it all. You know, in resolving conflict, if you have to let go something, then it means that you are also letting it go for the sake of peace. If the three parties now are unwilling to let go some of these things, they will not put an end to it, even after the leadership of Governor Nasir El-Rufai. So they have to be deliberate and they have to be willing to put an end to this. We hope that at the end of the stipulated 1 week he had given them as ultimatum, they will be able to come up with something and say to the government that they are done with it and they have resolved their conflict, because nobody can resolve your conflict better than you yourself.
At the end of the meeting, a Peace Reconciliation Committee has been set up with representatives from Atiap, Hausa and Fulani communities as members, with a view to resolving all the lingering issues within a week for gazetting by the Kaduna State government. But one wonders if 7 days is enough for a matter that has gone unresolved for the past 2 decades.
And to Labour matters now, the federal government is again assuring staff union of universities that it will address issues of welfare and their working conditions through the 2023 budget allocation to the education sector. But this is according to former Vice-Chancellor of Modibo Adama University in Yola, Professor Abdullahi Ribadu, who represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the 27th convocation ceremony of the university. Professor Ribadu says that universities must perform their roles and reposition themselves for impactful education for sustainable development of the country.
It's the 27th convocation ceremony of the Modibo Adama University Yola. Graduating students and their lecturers make their way into the field for the memorable occasion, attended by the Governor of Adamawa State, Umaru Fintiri, Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State, former Governor of Adamawa State, the Sultan of Sokoto Saad Abubakar III, among other dignitaries.
President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and visitor.
The Pro-Chancellor and Chancellor of the university welcomed the guests, highlighting the university's plan to implement new academic programs for students.
Convocation marks a significant transition, one of the most important of your lives, from students to alumni. I have a gleaming vision of you in my heart. What I see are remarkable achievements as you take your skills into a world that still needs you.
Our university is also hopeful of regaining full accreditation for all its programs following the recent resource verification of 2 of our programs by the NUC.
By the unanimous decision of both Senate and Council of the Modibo Adama University, Yola.
The 4 honorary degree awardees are Dan Madanin Emirates, Mr. Dahiru Dobo, the former governor of Adamawa State, Mr. Boni Haruna, business entrepreneur and philanthropist, Mr. Mohammed Idimi, and Sultan of Sokoto, His Royal Highness Saad Abubakar III. They are being recognized for their contribution in the education sector. The Sultan of Sokoto speak on behalf of the awardees.
Knowledge remains the source of all good, and no meaningful progress can be registered without recourse to knowledge. The corollary is also true. Ignorance is the source of all evil, and we must fight ignorance and promote knowledge if we are to avoid the debilitating problems we have today as a society.
The Chancellor's Prize for the overall best graduating student in this university.
With 24 best graduating students, Emmanuel takes the lead as the overall best graduating, best male, and best students in the Faculty of Physical Sciences, with cumulative grade points average of 4.88.
Graduation is a time of reminiscing on the past and looking onwards to the future. We are to take everything this university and life and the world has taught us and go forth.
Governor Fintiri and the representative of President Muhammadu Buhari gives a word of advice to the graduates with an assurance of full implementation of the 2023 budget allocation for the education sector.
In our desire to make sure that we do not go back to the era where less attention is given to the educational sector, the federal government would ensure the full implementation of the budgetary allocations to education in the 2023 fiscal year.
As you receive your diplomas and degrees, I wish you the best of luck and better hunting. As always, remember, farewell isn't goodbye. Give back to your alma mater.
Take a bow before the Chancellor.
A total of 4,638 students from 2020 and 2021 session were found worthy of character and learning and admitted with various degrees.
And now to agriculture. 8 states have applied to access a $500 million World Bank loan secured by the federal government for the development of livestock. Well, this was disclosed by the National Coordinator of the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project, Mr. Sanusi Abubakar, during an engagement mission for Northeast in Yola, the Adamawa State capital. Well, the initiative is a 6-year project to improve livestock productivity and commercialization of selected value chains, as well as strengthen the country's capacity to respond to crisis.
Adamawa, the first state to sign up for the World Bank Credit Facility to develop livestock, is hosting the first post-subsidiary loan agreements engagement mission. State coordinators of the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project from the 6 Northeast states have gathered here to rub minds on efforts to ensure a smooth implementation of the program.
This project, as of today, 8 states, Adamawa, Borno, Gombe, Yobe, Kogi, Kwara, Niger, and Oyo, have signed their subsidiary loan agreement with the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and Management. Let me use this opportunity to congratulate the states that have signed and encourage the other states to do so for the benefit of our livestock sector.
On our part as a ministry and as a coordinating unit for all donor-funded projects, we will continue to support FRSC to achieve its project development objectives of improving livestock productivity, resilience, and commercialization of selected value chains, and to strengthen Nigeria's capacity to respond to crises and emergencies in the livestock sector.
Aside from Adamawa State, the other states that have signed for the World Bank facility are Borno, Gombe, Taraba, Kwara, Niger, and Oyo states. The loan is to support livestock farmers, processors, and marketers to improve their overall productivity.
I wish to appreciate the organizers for selecting Adamawa State as the host of this laudable program. In this spirit, we are always ready to partner with World Bank and the Federal Ministry of Agri and Rural Development and other agencies for project and policy implementation.
Launched by President Muhammadu Buhari on January 31st, 2023, the coordinator of the project is urging more states to take advantage of the facility to boost livestock development in their states.
To remove or not to remove petrol subsidy? Well, that's one question Nigerians are looking to get answers to as a new administration beckons. For the World Bank, Nigeria's fiscal situation, particularly the huge budget deficit, is a pointer to why the decision should be made as soon as possible. The World Bank Country Director for Nigeria, Mr. Shubham Chaudhary, says that this is why the institution is offering Nigeria the $800 million loan to cushion the effect of subsidy removal. I spoke with him earlier from our Abuja studio. Over 5 trillion naira estimated to be spent on subsidy for 2023. That's if it's not removed by June. So the World Bank's position on subsidy is clear. It should be removed. But how do you convince the labor unions, for example, the poor, the vulnerable, and those who will be impacted the most on this subsidy removal move?
I think I would begin with basically presenting to them the choice that really is theirs to make, which is, would you rather have 5 trillion of the government's scarce resources going towards subsidizing PMS, where, yes, everyone benefits a bit from having PMS being at a slightly lower price, but most of the benefits don't go to the poor, don't go to ordinary Nigerians. If you look at the National Bureau of Statistics household surveys, the bottom 40% of the population only purchases about 3% of the PMS that NNPC gives the bill to the Federation for. Then all households put together, maybe about 25%, and the rest, firms, businesses, and most importantly, potentially those who are looking to make lots of money and rents from smuggling across the border to neighboring countries where the price of PMS is a lot higher. So what I would say to the labor unions, to ordinary hardworking Nigerians is, would you rather see the money go towards subsidizing, basically the benefits that are largely going to the rich and to smugglers, or would you rather have government put those towards primary health care, towards keeping kids in school, towards connecting farmers to markets, to investing in better security for everyone? So that would be the starting point. But I would also acknowledge that if subsidies are removed, the prices will go up. I don't think they will go up. We don't think they will go up as much as some fear, but prices will go up. So it is important that government do take steps to provide some relief, to soften the blow of rising prices for ordinary Nigerians. And one can think of a variety of measures. And in fact, the facility that you mentioned is one that we have made available, should Nigeria choose to draw it down, to provide targeted cash transfers in a very robustly verifiable way to ordinary Nigerians.
I mean, we see that move has begun already at the National Assembly, but you still put the caveat, should Nigeria? And the question naturally is, so which of the administrations is this facility going to? Is it the outgoing administration or the incoming administration?
Our financing is always to the sovereign, so a government takes that on. But the key thing about this facility is that until a government actually starts drawing down concessional financing that we provide, the government can always opt out, can change. So basically, the fact that our board has approved it does not mean that Nigeria is now obligated to draw it down. We hope that the government, both the incoming government at this stage, will think that this is an important part of the overall package, the compact that government, political leaders at all levels need to have with the Nigerian people, saying that, look, we have to take this necessary step of removing PMS subsidies, but we will ensure that the recovered revenues will be used for the benefit of everyone, and we will help try to provide immediate relief, cushion some of the pain by providing targeted cash transfers. So we certainly hope, let me be clear, we certainly hope that the incoming government, the National Assembly, the public at large will think that this is worth doing and our financing is available. But I do want to make clear that the fact that our board has approved it, that the current government has decided that they would like to draw it down, the incoming government, the National Assembly, the public at large has a choice. If everyone thinks this is worth doing and it is drawn down, only then does this add to Nigeria's debt, which I know is on everyone's mind.
Indeed, and that is a fear for a lot of people. They look at the debt burden where it is now, and they just do the math, add the $800 million to it. And I mean, you probably have seen all of the headlines and the conversation around that. But what's the propriety really of, getting this loan when the idea of removing PMS subsidy is to free up funds? So why borrow when, if you remove it, you'd actually free up funds anyway?
So I think that's a very valid point, but I think everyone needs to be clear on the fact that whether or not Nigeria takes on this $800 million in additional concessional, highly concessional financing, Nigeria's, if you look at the budget for 2023, the projected deficit is already 10.7 trillion naira. And that's if PMS subsidies are removed by the end of June. If PMS subsidies are not removed by the end of June, the deficit will be 12 trillion naira or more. I mean, that's just plain algebra. And then the question is that deficit has to be financed. So the fact is that Nigeria will be taking on more debt to finance the deficit. At this point, unfortunately, with revenues being as low as they are, Nigeria has no choice. So the question is, how do you finance that deficit? Is it going to be 10.7 trillion or 12 trillion? And the financing from us is one part of the financing that's available. You can go to the domestic market, you can go to the Eurobond market. So there are other choices, or you can borrow from the central bank, as unfortunately has happened in the past with the ways and means financing. All of those sources of financing are quite expensive. So the choice is, one, already there's a 10.7 trillion deficit, even if PMS subsidies are removed, right? So one choice is to just use the recovered revenues to borrow less. But then the choice for Nigeria is, does the public need to see some benefits from having PMS subsidies removed?
As a World Bank Country Director for Nigeria, Shubham Chaudhry, speaking earlier on with me on the subsidy regime and the $800 million facility to Nigeria. You can catch the full interview on our YouTube page. Well, let's talk Imo politics now. The Christian Association of Nigeria, Imo State Chapter, has thrown its weight behind Governor Hope Uzodinma's second-term bid in office following his performances in the last 3.5 years in office. Well, this was made known during the yearly interdenominational service organized by the Christian Association of Nigeria at the Ndubuisi Kanu Square in Owerri, the state capital. The Christian community in the state also used the opportunity to adopt and dedicate the Imo Charter of Equity documents to God, while also praying for peace in the state, especially as the November governorship election draws closer.
It is the third annual Christian Association of Nigeria Interdenominational Service, tagged Imo Praise, a yearly event organized by the Christian Association of Nigeria in Imo State to pray for peace and stability. This year's theme is Peace and Unity, the bedrock for sustainable development. The state governor, Hope Uzodinma, as always, is present with members of his cabinet to rejoice and pray with Imo indigents who were present in their numbers. One after another, prayers are offered by church leaders for Imo State.
We pray thee, O Father, that you will renew the heart of our youth, that they will think of things that will promote peace and unity in our land in the name of Jesus Christ.
By the reason of this our gathering today, whatever that causes commotion in the land of Imo State is hereby terminated in the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
The president of the Christian Council of Nigeria, Bishop David Onoha, gives a brief charge on the need for Imo people to embrace peace and support the incumbent administration in the state.
For God to grant us the prosperity we all are praying for in Imo State, there must be peace, there must be unity.
Thereafter, the chairman of the Imo State Elders Council, Mr. Cletus Ilomwanya, officially hands over the document containing the Imo State's Charter of Equity to the governor. For the governor, his sterling performance in the last 3.5 years, in spite of the numerous security challenges, is a testimony that his government is people-friendly. He promises that his administration will continue to bring development to the state.
The government of Imo State under my watch is installed by God. And I don't pretend about it. Cautious of that, where possible, I always make sure available government instruments are properly deployed to support the church in their work of serving our people. The idea of do or die, if I'm not the one, it shouldn't be anybody. It should not be for man. It should always be for God.
The event witnessed several choir renditions and musical performances, especially by the guest artist Mercy Chinwo. Even though insecurity in Imo State appears to have considerably reduced, the Christian leaders in the state say more prayers are needed to bring all security challenges to a halt to allow for absolute peace and stability in the state.
Also healthcare now. Renowned drug manufacturer Pfizer is creating awareness on antimicrobial stewardship, and the company's position is that government and public health community must work with the pharma industry to take further action and support measures that will enable continued innovation in the development of new antibiotics and vaccines to help curb the spread of antimicrobial resistance, AMR. By 2050, the UN estimates that up to 10 million deaths could be caused by superbugs and associated forms of antimicrobial resistance, matching the annual global death toll of cancer. AMR is a silent threat, but it is already here and needs urgent attention. If AMR continues to rise unchecked, formerly minor infections could become life-threatening, serious infections could become superbugs that are impossible to treat, and many routine medical procedures could become too risky to perform. On May 9, 2023, Pfizer went on to create awareness about antimicrobial stewardship and hosted a virtual media roundtable to raise awareness to ensure ongoing patient safety so as to maintain the future effectiveness of antibiotics. Attended by medical professionals, Professor Oyinlola Oduyebo of Luth and Dr. Kennedy Wariso of UPTH, the roundtable saw participants discuss the need for antimicrobial stewardship, that's AMS, as treatment of infections become more difficult due to widespread emergence of antimicrobial resistance. Dr. Kojo Soro, who's a medical director, West Africa Pfizer, in his words, said, antimicrobial resistance occurs when bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites change over time and no longer respond to medicines, making infections harder to treat and increasing the risk of disease spread, severe illness, and death. AMR is one of the biggest threats to global health today and can affect anyone of any age and in any country. If it continues to rise unchecked, minor infections could become life-threatening and serious infections could become impossible to treat. And without action by governments, industry, and society, AMR is expected to cause 10 million deaths each year by 2050. Overuse of antibiotics is creating stronger germs, and some bacteria are already resistant to common antibiotics. When bacteria become resistant to antibiotics, it is often harder and more expensive to treat the infection. Losing the ability to treat serious bacterial infections is a major threat to public health. Well, currently, at least 700,000 people die each year due to drug-resistant diseases. And more common diseases, including respiratory tract infections, sexually transmitted infections, and urinary tract infections, are untreatable. Life-saving medical procedures are becoming much riskier, and our food systems are increasingly precarious. According to Professor Oyinlola Oduyebo, antimicrobial resistance is a serious threat to global public health, and it increases morbidity and mortality and is associated with high economic costs due to its health care burden. Well, antimicrobial stewardship, which is an organization or system-wide healthcare strategy, is designed to promote, improve, monitor, and evaluate the rational use of antimicrobials to preserve their future effectiveness. Or the One Health approach, which is a holistic and multi-sectoral approach, is also needed to address AMR's rising threat. AMS practices, principles, and interventions are critical towards containing and mitigating AMR. In the words of Professor Kennedy Wariso, antimicrobial stewardship programs optimize the use of antimicrobials, improve patient outcomes, reduce AMR and healthcare-associated infections, and save healthcare costs, among others. Well, a robust pipeline of new antimicrobials is essential to restoring the balance against increasing rates of AMR. However, significant economic hurdles have made research and development in this area a challenge. And no novel class of antibiotics has been launched for almost 40 years. And even when newly approved treatments come to market, they may be used sparingly to support good antimicrobial stewardship practices, making it difficult to recover the high cost associated with development or new reimbursement models that more fully reflect the complete value of antimicrobials are critical. Well, let's take you to Anambra State now, where Governor Chukwuma Soludo is worried about the decay in infrastructure in the state. And it appears that water supply is a major aspect that needs urgent attention. And this, the governor recognizes as he announces an urban renewal agenda that will focus on infrastructural reforms and reactivation of pipe-borne water in the state. The governor, who has been on a tour of Onitsha North and South to inspect the level of adherence to environmental laws, explains that this urban renewal project will ensure a cleaner environment.
It's a strategic 6-hour tour of the governor and his team to sites where the state has invested massive infrastructure back in the years. The investments, which cost government huge resources, are now abandoned. These include the Onitsha Governor's Lodge, the Judges' Quarters, the Onitsha GRA Waterworks, and the Greater Onitsha Water Supply Scheme in Kisii.
Some basic infrastructure, that is a part of the thing that makes me sad. You know, the amount of sunk costs, massive investments of the past many years, World Bank projects and so on and so forth, that were just put in place and then abandoned for years.
The exercise also gives the governor the opportunity to feel the pulse of the Ochanja traders and residents of Mbane 4th Street who expressed their joy over the desilting exercise ongoing. The governor is confronted with cases of lawlessness and abusive building plans in the metropolis. Activities of land grabbers who encroach into government-owned properties, as well as structures blocking drainage channels, among them churches and the divisional police station. The governor is utterly disappointed.
People with impunity, building without approvals, building at the wrong places, building on top of drainages, and so on and so forth, and blocking waterways and all of that. And what we have come today, I think when we launched it, we had a work program. What we've come today to do is actually to see whether the work program that was set out is actually being executed.
Students of the Urban Girls Secondary School, Onitsha, made the governor's day with a soul-lifting ovation as it passes by their school. The governor promises to pay the third-term school fees of 2,350 students of the school.
Well, it's time for business news on the news at 10. Here's Anne Oawudo.
Thank you, Kayode. Hello and welcome to Business News. The World Bank has advised Nigeria and other rich energy countries in Africa to adopt asset diversification in their oil and gas sector as the best option for economic transformation. A report released by the International Finance Institution says the policymakers in these countries may have more success working towards asset diversification rather than export diversification. The World Bank further highlights that Nigeria and other oil-rich regions on the continent have failed to maximize the oil and gas resource boom between 2004 and 2014, which has led to poverty and increased inequality in many resource-rich countries. The Association of Licensed Telecom Operators in Nigeria, ALTON, says it may be forced to withdraw unstructured supplementary service data, that's USSD, to banks over debt worth 120 billion naira. In a statement sent to journalists, the umbrella body of the mobile network operators in the country says the deposit money banks have continued to incur greater debts without making commensurate payments. They say the development is coming despite multi-party stakeholders' efforts led by the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, the Nigerian Communications Commission, and the Central Bank of Nigeria to avert this situation. The statement from ALTON mentions that its members have received approval from the telecoms operator and sector regulator, that's the Nigerian Telecommunications Commission, the NCC, to withdraw USSD services rendered to the banks. Nigeria's foreign exchange reserve recorded another decline this week as the gross reserves fell by $34.19 million week on week to $35.22 billion as at May the 10th. Economic experts have said the latest figure obtained from the CBN's website, which has been attributed to rising demand pressure on official forex gross reserves, as well as reduced foreign exchange inflow into the economy. They explain that the downward trend is expected to continue in the coming weeks as major sources of forex inflow deteriorate and it could be impounded by adverse ruling in the ongoing P&ID trial. Meanwhile, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Bismarck Rewane, says the CBN's inability to meet up the pressure of its managed exchange rate would lead to further depreciation of the naira. Investor sentiment at the local equities market ended the second trading week in the month of May downbeat. The all-share index and the equities capitalization fell by 0.48%. This is coming amid a mixture of bargain hunting and the profit-taking activities recorded across all key 5 sectors within 5 trading sessions, while Boa Cement's share price loss contributed largely to the market's loss in the week. However, activities chart ended positive as a total volume, value and number of deals carried out this week were significantly higher in contrast to the activities recorded last week on the NGX. Meanwhile, Computer Warehouse Group tops a list of 48 gainers with more than 56% increase on its share price. CNI Leasing led 29 other losers, down by 19.6%. The trio of Fidelity Bank, Access and FBN Holdings were the top 3 contributors to more than 3.6 billion shares traded this week. And at the unlisted securities market, activities ended the second week in the month of May in the red. Both the NAS, the NAST OTC Exchange Securities Index, and the market's capitalization all dropped by about 0.25%. However, it's a different picture for activities chart on that market. The total volume of securities traded on the exchange jumped by more than 84%. The total value of securities traded increased by more than 500%, while deals and stocks traded this week were also higher, in contrast to the performance that was seen last week. We hope to see positive results in the coming week, but that's it on Business News for this week. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Kayode.
Well, thank you, Anne. Sports news now. Southampton have been relegated after a 2-0 defeat against Fulham, capped a nightmare season for the club. Southampton will now return to the second tier for the first time in 11 years. Leeds United survival hopes received a late lift as they came from behind to earn a point against Newcastle United. Manchester United bounced back from consecutive defeats by beating Wolverhampton Wanderers to strengthen their bid for a top 4 finish. Aston Villa's transformation from relegation strugglers to European contenders continued with victory over Tottenham Hotspur. Super Eagles forward Taiwo Awoniyi scored twice as Nottingham Forest claimed a valuable point against Chelsea. And elsewhere, runaway leaders Barcelona will have the chance to clinch their 27th Spanish La Liga crown when they face city rivals Espanyol tomorrow. A victory at the Cornellà El Prat Stadium will give Barcelona an unassailable lead over Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid with 3 games left. Barcelona coach Xavi Hernandez is confident that the Catalan Giants can secure the title. Barcelona were last La Liga champions in 2018-2019 season, while Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid have claimed the crown in the last 3 seasons. And out to tennis, Carlos Alcaraz has marked his return to the world #1 ranking by comfortably seeing off fellow Spaniard Albert Ramos Vinoyes in his first ever match at the Rome Masters. Alcaraz, who outclassed Ramos Vinoyes 6-4, 6-1, will overtake Novak Djokovic at the top of ATP rankings and is now assured of the top seeding at the French Open later this month. The Spaniard became the youngest ever world #1 thanks to his US Open triumph in September last year. The 20-year-old will begin his 23rd week at world #1 on May the 22nd. Well, Pope Francis has told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that he is constantly praying for peace after the two met privately at the Vatican. The pontiff also stressed on the urgent need to help the most fragile people and innocent victims of the full-scale invasion launched by Russia last year. Mr. Zelensky earlier met Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who assured him of Rome's support for united Ukraine. More than 1,000 police officers were deployed and a no-fly zone over Rome is in place. Well, 2 Palestinians, including the 6th senior leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, have been killed in an Israeli raid on Balata refugee camp on the outskirts of Nablus in the northern West Bank. 32-year-old Said Masha and 19-year-old Adnan al-Raj were both shot in the head, and 3 others were reported injured but in stable condition. Well, Friday's strike followed a barrage of rockets fired from Gaza, some of which reached near Jerusalem. There were no reported injuries among the Israeli army. And the latest flare-up caps more than a year of resurgent Israeli-Palestinian violence that has killed more than 140 Palestinian and at least 19 Israelis and foreigners since January. And the main news again. The Inspector General of Police, Usman Al-Khalibaba, has ordered the arrest and prosecution of Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti after he was filmed slapping a uniformed officer. The singer has promised to cooperate with police investigation. And the Nigerian military today impounded and burnt another barge loaded with over 600 barrels of crude oil from illegal bunkering. And that's the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Good night.